Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Josh.
Hello.
Now I have been interrupted from my Death Stranding slumber. I'm half asleep. It was 2:15 a.m.
I'm so sorry.
I know, but apparently there's really good things happening in regards to a certain superhero.
Well, kind of. You know, good is a very relative term. Who knows? Who knows whether it's good or bad? But
We are talking about Death Stranding.
There was a big thread from someone called James Stigfield on Twitter, who is a games journalist who has written for Geeks Worldwide and has leaked some superhero games tidbits in the past. Who did a thread on everything that WB has been working on in regards to a Superman game since 2013, because they have apparently gone through a lot of different prototypes, a lot of different revisions, trying to get this game off the ground, and sadly they have so far failed. But this thread in particular has really helped contextualize previous leaks, because there have been images floating around that hopefully we'll be able to put it in this video now that we have commented on before, where we were just kind of like speculating over them, but this has sort of put them into perspective and given us a clear view. So this starts all the way back in 2013, which is before obviously Arkham Knight released, and apparently WB were actively searching for a Superman project, for producers and directors to come on board and work on it. And what the original idea was to do something kind of like what Spider-Man PS4 became. When you have Superman, you have a major open world full of different DC villains, and you are essentially trying to create that sort of, you know, the peak Soups game where you have all the powers, you have a big metropolis, you can fly around, bowling for soups, and you have all these different villains, which could have been cool. Scott, would you have liked this approach?
Well, this reminds me of that massive leak that came out, was it last year or the year before, when it was like, ostensibly it was the, you know, the Arkham-style Superman game, and they had this whole like open, like mid-air combat system where you were punching people through like big expanses of land, and kind of like the scene at the end of Man of Steel where they're punching each other and flying across the sea. It reminds me of that. I think that the thing is, I'm a sucker for like general aerial combat and stuff like that, so I would love just the idea of a Superman game. I love the old game that was based on the animated series that was on the PS2, not Rise of Apocalypse, I'm sure it was called something else. Cell-shaded Superman game, you maybe played it.
Was it Rise of Apocalypse?
It might have been. I don't think it was, but either way, there was a one back then where you had, you know, these laser eyes, you could fly around whatever you want, you could pick up different things, cars and whatever. I love Superman's moveset, so for me, the reality of a Superman game at all is a dream for me.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into it when I talk about the next game, but I feel like, you know, Superman's array of powers have always been kind of limiting for game developers who can't realize them. But surely we're at the point now where we've got these giant open world, we've got these like gorgeous visuals where we can do that, just as we can make you this overpowered, godly superhero person who can fly through walls and fight people in midair. That is just untapped. I feel like you said, the aerial combat in particular could be so interesting and unique and visceral. And yet it's just kind of, not only is one of the biggest sort of superhero names just sort of being wasted in the gaming space, but all of the possibilities that come with utilizing his unique powers is just kind of, it's just up in the ether. It's like, why has no one grabbed this? Obviously WB have tried, but they failed to get projects off the ground. And it's like, I don't really understand why.
Well, so many conversations around the character and reasons that projects have fallen apart, or seem to have fallen apart in the past, is that loads of devs have to try and think of a way to hamper that power set. And go, okay, well, we can't make it too overpowered, it can't be this big escapist fantasy or whatever, and we need to think of a way to like bring him back down to earth. But that's not what makes the character great. You leave his power set intact and you give him scenarios that mean he has to choose between certain things. He can't punch everyone in the face all at the same time. He can't lift 5 cars at the same time. Well, he probably can. But like if they were in a row, you know, he can't do that. He can't get his arms around.
His arms aren't long enough.
He's never going to do that.
He's not James Hunt, you know what I mean?
No, I know. So, you know, give him a parking job. I don't know. I went to bed at 2 a.m. But I think if you did something like that, then that makes more sense. You leave his power set intact and you create a game around that. You don't try and hamper it. You don't give him some weird mist thing that weakens him. You know, you do it around that. For me, it would be entirely about letting you be Superman and just framing everything else around the mission structure around that.
Well, you might be pleased that the next game, which was titled Superman Unbound, that started development in 2014, was actually cancelled, because that's what this project was going to do. It was going to limit sort of Superman's kind of moveset and kind of bring him down to size and make him more like, you know, Batman or your average hero than the godly monster that he is. But this was going to be set in Kandor, which I had to look up. It's so sorry. City. It's a bottled city created by Brainiac, a tiny little shrunken city that Superman was going to, you know, roam around in. This was going to be more inspired by the comics and the animated series, and wouldn't have been as open world as the previous prototype. Would have been more like the Arkham games, which I quite like. I like that Metroidvania almost-esque style to it, where you've got a distinct, smaller, more detailed space that you can open up new areas of. I don't know whether that would have worked for Superman.
Well, I'm just thinking you'd come to like a wall and it glows red and it's like, Superman, you can't use your eye lasers yet. And he's like, I've got to go get the eye lasers.
Oh God, I've forgotten them back in my Superman trunk down there.
Let me remember how to blink properly so I can burn through this wall. Yeah, I mean, you could do it, you know.
Could do it. This game apparently died though because WB mandated that all of their following projects should be made on the Arkham engine, which apparently just completely messed up the flight systems for any Superman game because it's not built for that, which is a kind of recurring problem we've had throughout the entire industry. We've commented so many times about EA making everyone use the Frostbite engine and how that has caused problems because that engine is gorgeous and beautiful and elegant, but it's built for first-person shooters. So when you get a company like BioWare to come in and create a third-person open-world RPG,
it's the
complete opposite. It just doesn't work. The tools aren't there, and it's more hassle than it's worth. And this is obviously, this mentality is hampering games because the thread also stated that that's kind of what damaged WB Montreal's Suicide Squad game.
Right.
That was obviously...
Oh, the mandated engine was the same thing.
Yes, that was they also had to use the engine, and apparently that caused problems there. They made in the thread, there's the example that apparently all the Suicide Squad members would be like jumping around on gargoyles again because it's just, that's what the engine was. So it's not built for anything else, which kind of makes me worried about the future if they ever do get a Superman game off the ground, because this information only goes up to these two. Oh God. Oh God.
Off the ground?
I'm a pun master.
Super pun man. Die pun man.
If they ever get a Superman game off the ground, though, will it be hampered by these same limitations? I don't know, Scott. I hope not.
The thing is, right, did you play the Superman Returns game on Xbox 360?
I briefly dabbled, but no, nothing. I can't remember the movie, never mind the game.
Right, because that was like a big open world thing. You had access to Metropolis and you had different crimes happening around the city. Open world Superman game. I think because I was younger and more stupid, I just kind of went with it.
Sorry, was this the game where Metropolis has its own life bar? Was that something else? Yeah, I do remember this, yes.
Yeah, so it's just like, my overall point is just that if you can nail at all the idea of just running around on the ground fighting different people or solving crimes and then just being able to kick off the ground and go all the way up and look down to this little dot that now resembles Metropolis, for me that's an intrinsically cool quality that I think that you can just kind of start with something like that. I get that they need to frame a whole other story and different set of missions and whatever, but there's something to Superman's base moveset or power set that just hasn't even been done. The nearest thing was a movie tie-in that no one played.
Well, it's sort of, when you get games like, Anthem, for as much as we complain about it, the flight mechanics in that game for me are awesome. Like the way you can just sort of jump off the ground and you could just barrel to your next destination.
It's the best thing in the game.
It's the best thing in the game, and it makes you feel probably more like Iron Man than Superman, but it's that same superhero thrill that a lot of superhero games just kind of weirdly don't have.
No, but like with flight in general, like hardly any third-person games or action games let you just kick off the ground and hover for a bit. Like you said, like Anthem lets you do it, and once you get used to those controls in Anthem, like you said, that's the best thing in that game.
Definitely.
And I think just, in terms of like a base power set, it's weird because if you're coming at it as a developer, you don't want to just give Superman everything from the beginning. Although I would argue that you should invert that and totally just let us be Superman and then frame a game structure or narrative around that. I don't know how you do that.
I don't know. It makes me think of sort of, remember Control from earlier this year?
Oh, that's what I was thinking of. I was like, someone floated this, yeah? Yeah, it's Control.
That's it. Like, once you unlock the power to, you can't fly in the game, but you can certainly levitate around the area. And when you're fighting enemies from that elevated state and you're sort of weaving in and out of the air, dodging sort of things that are thrown at you, that was unbelievably satisfying. And why hasn't there been a Superman game with that in mind? What's interesting is that they don't name developers though in this thread, which makes me wonder who was working on it, because obviously ever since Arkham Knight shipped, everyone just assumed that Rocksteady were working on Superman, but that increasingly seems like it's not the case at all.
I'll tell you what's interesting.
Never have been.
Even if, as a quick side note, whatever Rocksteady are working on, like, assumedly it's still the Arkham Knight engine, if that's the thing that WB are mandating anyway.
Definitely. I mean, they helped sort of, define that. I suppose they're sort of like the dice when it comes to that engine. They have kind of perfected it, but I wonder if that does sort of lead to limitations on what they're working on. Because
the thing with the DICE engine, with the Frostbite engine, was that eventually some of people at DICE went over to BioWare and helped them get chunks of Anthem online. Obviously not enough of it to make it brilliant or whatever, but they got it working enough. Assumedly the people that coded over at Rocksteady could go across to work with whoever's underneath WB's umbrella and get the Superman game off the ground eventually.
It's just off the ground again. Another super pun.
Good.
It's just the sort of the way they approach it, because by the sounds of things, when it came to EA, when they were sort of lending DICE employees out to different projects, they were prioritizing based on the games that were going to make them the most profit. But we've seen this year with Death Stranding that used the Decima engine, which was built by Guerrilla Games for Horizon Zero Dawn, and Kojima and his team got help from Guerrilla employees. I think I read a report where about 70 Guerrilla employees worked on the game, which obviously made them sort of tweak the engine and rebuild it in a way that would benefit Death Stranding, which is, although it's open world, it's a very different game from Horizon. And I think the results on that title are so stunning. So hopefully that sets the groundwork going forward for that kind of collaborative experience. It proves that, a mandated video game engine doesn't have to be a sort of
a death knell. I think it obviously can work. I mean, in regards to this, like right now, it just means that we've had like previous projects that have been potentially talked about and then canned. Right now, they're still looking into it.
They're still looking into it. The final note was that this is all the information James Sigfield actually has. They might have gotten a Superman game. Here it comes again, off the ground since then. But they don't know. Soaring through the sky. They don't know. This is all the information they have. They might have figured it out, but who knows? We know it's not Rocksteady at least. So we know it's not WB Montreal, who are definitely working on a Batman game. So whether they've just sort of given up on the idea or are still actively pursuing it, we won't find out for a long time yet, sadly.
I think I'm curious about what the hell they do going forward, because considering the state of Superman right now, I think they would have initially tried to get something, I'm not going to say off the ground, in motion.
There we go.
To line up with the state that WB thought the DCEU would be in. They thought they would have this comfortable shared universe thing. Superman would be like a known quantity. Batman v Superman would be held up as this brilliant, fantastic thing. And all of that kind of just fell apart. Obviously, Superman is still a known quantity, but in terms of the movie version, the idea of people wanting to play as him in a wider sort of mainstream context, none of that stuff came true, and all of it crashed and burned.
My issue is WB can't keep chasing that, though, because that sort of seems like what they were trying to do with Suicide Squad. That was in development around the time the movie was going to be released, and it seems like they were sort of trying to cash in on that, and then it got cancelled. And it's like, stop trying to meld the two worlds together. That can be really good, but if you're banking on just sort of using the name value of successful movies to make great games, you're going to get to situations like this where you have to constantly rethink because they're two completely different landscapes and they don't work in tandem like that.
In theory, though, going forward, we might eventually get a Superman game. But let us know what you think down in the comments below, and the idea of it being used, and the Arkham Knight engine being used for the game itself. But now, though, I've Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I mean, Josh from WhatCulture.com.
I'll catch you next time. Bye. Crypto bio.